In the previous video, we discussed learner processes during learning. Each of those processes is governed by a corresponding principle of learning. Those include dual channels, limited capacity, and active processing. Today we will examine how new knowledge is perceived and how it moves through memory to be integrated with pre-existing knowledge. There are three primary stages of memory: sensory memory, working memory, and long-term memory. Sensory memory is ubiquitous and constantly aware of the world surrounding us. Most information perceived through sensory memory is almost immediately filtered out of consciousness, as we determine what warrants further attention and what does not. Working memory, sometimes referred to as short-term memory, is involved with those stimuli which we have chosen to pay attention to. In a learning environment, those are primarily things we see or things we hear. The goal of working memory is to make sense of what we perceive. Finally, as novel stimuli and information are processed in working memory, it may eventually pass into long-term memory via the process of encoding. The capacity of long-term memory is generally considered to be infinite, and the knowledge stored there can be recalled later as needed. Now that we better understand the stages of memory, how do learner processes and the principles of learning fit? To understand that, let's review Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning. Begin by considering some multimedia content, such as a lecture presentation. Such presentations contain both words and pictures, novel stimuli to learners, something in the environment that can be perceived by sensory memory. Such perception happens via the principle of dual channels, wherein new information can be processed through either the ears or eyes. In a multimedia presentation, words exist both on screen and are spoken by the presenter. Thus, words are processed by both the ears and the eyes. Conversely, pictures on screen are only processed through the eyes. As learners begin to pay attention to certain elements being presented, we arrive at the first learner process depicted in Dr. Mayer's theory: selecting words and selecting images. Learners must determine what content to pay attention to, that is, what content relates to or supports the main goal of the lesson. As learners engage in this process of selecting words and selecting images, they begin to internally conceptualize the corresponding sounds and images. Here we enter working memory, which is subject to the principle of limited capacity. Learners can only process so much new information at any given time. The information they do process must be organized into a mental representation of what is being presented, either a verbal model or a pictorial model. As learners develop such models, they have entered into active processing. That is, cognitive activity that, if sustained, will result in long-term knowledge via the process of encoding. New information is mentally conceptualized and incorporated with pre-existing knowledge already stored in long-term memory. As new knowledge is formed, it must be integrated with any pre-existing knowledge that is similar. In other words, where does the new knowledge fit with what is already known? Is pre-existing knowledge changed or expanded by the new knowledge? This change in knowledge will impact how subsequent new knowledge is processed too. In a perfect world, learners would engage in this process every time they need to learn something new without issue. Unfortunately, as we all know, there are many things that can stall or interrupt the learning process. To that point, our next video will begin by exploring three types of cognitive processing that happen during learning: extraneous processing, essential processing, and generative processing. Until next time.